Tales from the Vault: The True Power of Radiation. When I was a young girl, I was insanely curious. Now that I am older, I find myself curiously insane as well. I grew in a normal family, a nuclear family. My mother, father, and I all lived in a quaint little house in a quaint little town. My mother was, like most women those days, a housewife. She cooked, cleaned, and took care of me while my father worked. My father was a mechanic that typically specialized in cars but would sometimes also work on other machines. My family was devout, going to church every Sunday. We were patriotic, God bless America and all that. We watched baseball in the afternoon and the evening news afterwards. My mother sometimes made a cherry pie to share with the neighbors. Everything about my childhood was stereotypical and normal. Except me. Where other girls looked to follow their mothers and learn to be the best lady they could, I wanted to build things. I wanted to learn things. I was fascinated by everything in the world. Medicine, science, technology, you name it. My father would scold me that these things were not proper interests for a young girl, but my mother always managed to get him to drop it. I never thought about doing the things others girl did. No, I was going to be an engineer, a doctor, a scientist. I would build robots. I would cure cancer. I would solve the world's energy crisis. One day, something strange occurred. My father came home early from work. He was coughing up blood and looked deathly pale. My mother took him up to the hospital immediately. He couldn't even protest. The doctor said that my father was suffering from something called radiation sickness. He had been working on a leaky fusion engine for a car for too long and had taken in too much of the radiation seeping out. I didn't know what radiation was, but I didn't want to look foolish in front of the doctor, so I didn't ask. When I asked my mother if there was anything we could do to help my father, she said we can pray. And so I did. I prayed to God for my father to get better, and eventually he did. I knew God had heard my prayers and helped my father, but a question nagged at the back of my mind: why had God let my father get sick in the first place? It was a few more years before I would hear the word radiation again. My mother was always telling me that I sat too close to the television. Radiance, she would say. You're going to hurt your eyes sitting that close. I didn't listen, but then again my mother hadn't warned me that the television might explode. But that's what it did. While I was watching a baseball game, a power surge ran through the house, causing the lights to flicker. The television, on the other hand, couldn't handle the power flux and chose instead to explode. There was this bright flash and thundering sound before everything went dark. When I awoke, I found myself in the hospital, only this time I was the one in the hospital bed with my father looking over me. I had lots of bandages all over and a small sensor keeping track of my heartbeat. The doctor was talking to my mother about my condition as I started to come to. It's a miracle, he said. The radiation has gone far too quickly to be normal. Apparently, the television had irradiated me badly when it exploded, but by the time I awoke, most of the radiation had dissipated and my major cuts had healed, much quicker than was usual. The doctor said I had a guardian angel watching over me. Specifically, one who ate radiation. It was in that hospital bed that I realized that my name, Radiance, was oddly close to the word radiation. For the rest of my childhood, I would wonder if this was coincidence. Was I just the light of my mother's world, as she had attributed my naming to, or had my parents inadvertently caused God to curse me with an ironic radiation demon to follow me around? After I got out of the hospital, I went to the library. I would learn everything I could about radiation. Where it came from, what it could do to you. My father seemed particularly disturbed when his 10-year-old daughter asked about nuclear reactors at dinner one night. My mother assured him that this was just one of my phases. Just like airplanes, light bulbs, and the American Revolution, this was just something I would learn a lot about and then move on when I was satisfied. Unfortunately, I would never be satisfied with how much I knew about radiation. I was 16 when my radiation angel stuck its nasty fingers into my life again. My mother developed skin cancer from all the sun she got working on her garden. Radiation had descended from the heavens and poisoned her. As I found myself in that hospital again, I could feel my demonic angel watching over my shoulder, a wicked grin on its face. The medical team performed radiation therapy over the next few weeks. I found it curious that radiation was both the problem and the solution. However, God did not spare my mother and she died in that hospital. At that point I had all the evidence I needed. God had cursed me. I cursed him right back. After my mother passed away, my father cracked down hard on my studies and hobbies. No more science, he declared. Men were scientists, not women. No more medicine, men were doctors. No more robotics, men were engineers. He decided, without me, that I was to go to an all-women's school where they would teach me to be a real lady. I protested severely. The fight lasted days. Finally a compromise was made. I would not study science nor home economics, instead I would study law. Law school was not difficult for me and I still found time to sneak in time studying physics or botany or whatever I wanted. I had decided that I would specialize in medical law, ready to defend victims of tragedy from further injury from insurance companies. When I graduated, my first real case just so happened to involve a patient with severe radiation burns. When I won the case for my client with ease, it became clear that I should accept my curse and once again entangle myself with radiation. From that day forward, I was the Commonwealth's first and only radiation lawyer. I met my husband in a bar of all places. He was on leave from the military and charmed me with his ability to compete with me intellectually. I'll be honest, I was particularly interested in him because he was an engineer for the army and built robots, something I had always wanted to do. A year after that night, I found myself married and a mother, beginning a new part of my life which was proving to be fairly quaint. That is, until the bombs began to drop. As I stood on that hill watching the mushroom cloud develop, a single thought occurred to me: the true power of radiation has been unleashed. Stay paranoid, my friends.